Greetings, I'm Demonac, and this is a make-up video, where I make up an RPG element like an NPC or organization or an exotic location based on viewer suggestions. Usually it's also to make up for us missing another week of our Sunday Morning Heroes D&D 5e livestream. Sorry. You might get some story or a bunch of campaign ideas, but not a lot of game mechanics because it's more about the brainstorming. So, one miserable git suggested a troll pyromancer. Your basic sort of pseudo-contradictory idea, which we seem to get a lot of already. But here's where my mind went. Braaarg, Majaa grew up in the Black Branch Gorge, a rugged valley full of caves and many trolls. Too many, as competition for prey was fierce, and grew fiercer when humanoids learned not to venture near the area. Because of trolls. There was some infighting between the flesh-eating monsters, quite a lot when any prey came by, but trolls heal incredibly rapidly from physical damage, so they had no compunctions about tearing each other limb from limb, and the larger, stronger ones snatched the majority of the food, leaving the rest to grow scrawnier and scrawnier over time. Some of the smaller trolls were driven to leave the gorge, traveling alone and much further afield in search of opportunities to eat things. Braaarg, with his keen sense of smell, tracked some bite-sized kobold scouts as they fled back into their underground stronghold. For all their trap-making and ambushing prowess, these kobolds were mostly ill-equipped to deal with a large monster which regenerated so quickly that arrows which pierced him virtually popped back out, and who could climb out of their spiked pit mere moments after being impaled. Braaarg penetrated all the way to the dragon shrine where the kobolds worshipped the godlike beings they considered their progenitors. But there he stopped dead, in terror of the ceremonial bonfire. Fire is the bane of trolls, one of the very few dangers from which their endless flesh does not heal. Stumbling back at the fearful sight, Braaarg crashed into a shelf of urns which held the ancestors' ashes used to consecrate the shrine. The collision filled the air with the dust of kobold shamans of yore, leaving the troll coughing and sputtering. Braaarg was thus caught off guard, but so was Hyfix, the kobold sorcerer, who rushed in to find all the urns toppled or smashed, and the sacred ashes filling the air in a gray cloud. In her anguish, Hyfix miscast her burning hands spell slightly, far off-center, only catching the troll's arm. Even so, Braaarg, who had barely grunted when stabbed through the belly with 2 spears, now howled in pain as one of his hands was burned away down to the arm bone. Hyfix rushed to cast the spell again, shouting the mystical words through the cloud of now smoldering kobold ashes, but Braaarg recovered just enough, blinking through watering eyes, to see the little sorcerer preparing more bad magic, and he lunged down. With his great jaws he bit the sorcerer in half, just as she completed her spell, immolating herself and incinerating Braaarg from within. As the fires consumed them both, troll and the upper body of the severed kobold, Braaarg's flesh took on the appearance of embers crackling through blackened firewood, but rather than crumble and cease, the troll writhed in continued torment. Some unlikely accident of consecrated ashes, draconic sorcerer's blood, and her soul's release into death sparked a change in Braaarg, in whom furious regenerating life and burning death struggled for minutes, until somehow the troll won out, surviving fully intact, except for the hand which had been incinerated prior to the event. Braaarg turned and walked haltingly out of the lair of kobolds, paying them no heed, even as one panicked and fired a crossbow bolt into his back. The wooden projectile smoldered for a moment, but then was consumed by flame, leaving no sign of a wound. So there's the origin story of Braaarg Majaa, the troll pyromancer. His left arm has no hand, just a jagged bone spur projecting from the meat of his forearm, but when the flesh of that arm is further damaged, it always regenerates back up to the same bone stump. I like to think that he sharpens it against stone as a nervous tick, but that the bone doesn't regenerate until flesh near it is damaged. Otherwise, he regenerates normally, except that, since the accident, Braaarg can also recover from fire damage, making acid his only regen weakness. As a GM, you can decide whether he heals fire at normal speed, or heals it only after an hour, or a day, or if he simply has to spend an action to repair all his burns. He has sorcerer levels, or similar, casting some spells with his good hand, others, like burning hands, he casts thematically by blasting them out his maw, much like a breath weapon. Although I would definitely give him at least one area damage spell, just for the shock value / cool factor, unless you are weakening his physical attacks, you should focus on buff and movement spells, because a troll will nearly always be more effective ripping foes apart in hand-to-hand. Spells which augment his natural attacks or do damage to attackers, preferably fire damage, would be fairly effective. Apart from renaming him and building his stats, you can decide what the Pyro Troll did after the incident, based on what role you want him to serve. If you want just a pure villain, he probably went back to the Gorge and burned or conquered all his rival trolls. For more nuance, though, you have to ask yourself how much the soul of the Kobold Sorcerer became entwined with his in the accident. Does she serve as a conscience, trying to dissuade him from the most violent acts? Is she a presence in his mind that he's been forced to make peace with, or whom he has to fight for control in stressful situations? At some point, did she win? Braaarg probably isn't a genius at mental combat. And she either permanently took over his body, or creates sort of a Jekyll and Hyde situation? Or, I assume the kobold is relatively good. Maybe it's a hide and hide situation. Two villains in the same body in a timeshare, each with completely independent goals. Wherever in the spectrum you take it, you can create mystery and doubt over the truth of this character to make an NPC for whichever role you want. A conflicted villain, maybe redeemable, or a helpful or neutral NPC whose trustworthiness and goals are always in doubt and may change over time. And if one of the above intertwined soul possibilities is true, you could easily throw out some red herrings to make it seem like it might be a different one of those ideas. So that's my Troll Pyromancer makeup video. Make sure to suggest your own weird or interesting ideas in the comments or on Twitter at TailsDDC, and don't get too overly specific, because you never know what you'll get. Sorry again for the missed Sunday Morning Heroes streams, though if we get the technical junk fixed and get back to a regular schedule, I'll see about slipping in some of these videos anyhow, because they're a good creative exercise. And of course, for more of my storytelling, you should definitely check out the illustrated Tales from My D&D campaign.
If you want to find out what it's like when I'm the Dungeon Master, check out Tales from My D&D campaign.